Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. After weeks of having trouble with my computer, I'm finally able to continue working on the tutorial series. I again want to apologize for not doing any videos recently, but I had no choice. Now, if you watched the latest video I showed you on this channel, you know that this is because of my computer problem. There's a lot going to happen in the upcoming weeks here at ARTFX Studios. First, of course, there is the Tutorial Tuesday series where I'm going to work on the drop, and then there's gonna be the part of the Tutorial Tuesday series where I'm going to finish the track. Then I will make two final videos. One will be about mixdown, and the other one will be about mastering. But this is not all. Currently I'm working from my bedroom studio to provide you with tutorials and tracks each week. But I feel I'm kinda limited by my setup at the moment. So after I'm done with the tutorial series, I'm gonna rebuild my bedroom into a proper audio studio and film studio so I can make a lot more professional videos. We're also thinking about doing a lot of other videos in totally different genres, but for this I'm gonna send you over to my vlog sessions because I don't want to discuss this in this video. Vlog number 2 is going to be uploaded very soon and it will be on this same channel, so keep your eye out on this channel. So for now we're going to go on with the tutorial where I'm going to create the first bass patch. We're gonna make a bass patch with Albino tree, and this bass line at the end of this video is not gonna be the final bass line. It's just one patch, and next week I'm gonna make another patch, the week after it I'm gonna make another patch, and then I'm gonna rearrange these patches into a proper bass line. So, let's get started. Here we are, back with my project for this tutorial series. So, let's see. To fresh your minds up a little, I'm going to play this thing first. Time to zoom in on this first 8 bars of the drop. I always work in sections of 8 bars when doing my drops to make things easier for myself. The first 8 bars of the drop need to have this wow factor, which makes people actually like the drop, and thus this part of the drop is the most important. After the first 8 bars you get another 8 bars, which is basically a response to the first 8 bars of the drop, and so on. Just don't forget that the first 8 bars have the most impact on your listeners, so try to make it as good and big as possible. Now this goes for heavy electronic music, but also for other genres. You might not make it as big, but the rules are still the same. It's very likely that a listener will skip to the next track when your first part of the drop doesn't feel right. So, first I'm going to create a new MIDI track and I open it up. Now, I group this track in a group track by pressing Ctrl+G on my keyboard. I'll rename this track to Bass and I'll give it a fancy color, just to make things more clear. Now, on this track I'll load up Rob Pappen's Albino 3 VST plugin, with which I'll create today's patch. Albino 3 is bundled with some really good preset banks for moving pads and other elements. There is even a preset bank by the guys of Noisia, so be sure to take a look at them and see how they are made. You might learn something new from it. So the first thing I do inside Albino is creating a blank preset by going to the preset bank, Diverse Sounds, and then choosing the preset Z Initial Preset. Now I can close down Albino and put in some notes. First, I create a new MIDI clip by selecting an area and pressing Ctrl+Shift+M on my keyboard. So now in the MIDI clip I draw in some notes, 2 short ones followed by a long note. Then I stretch this clip to the end of this 8 bars. I then solo the track and press play to see how this initial patch sounds. Okay, so we have a basic saw wave now. Time to open up Albino and start making our sound. First I notice the slight release on the end of each note. I don't want this to release, so in the amp envelope I take down the release setting. The amp envelope controls the output volume of Albino, and by taking down the release you get a nice and snappy sound without a fading tilt. Now if I increase the release you can really hear what is happening, but for this sound I don't want any release, so I take it all the way down. Now for oscillator 1. I take the octave down to -2, which creates the nice low body of our bass sound. A saw wave is perfect for this sound, so I'll leave it at that. Next I like to add some spreading, which basically just adds some detuning to the sound and thus it will create more movement. Time to turn on oscillator 2 and turn off oscillator 1 for now, so I can work on the second oscillator with ease. I switch the mode of this oscillator to digital, which gives us a lot more waveforms to choose from and lets you even blend 2 waveforms together, like with wavetable synthesis for instance. So, for both waveforms I choose one of the spectral waveforms. These are very complex waveforms, but they can give you amazing sounds. You can choose any of the spectral waveforms to create all kinds of tones and timbres. So on the envelope section, I click the little mod button, which brings up our mod envelope. I first take the sustain down all the way. Now, in Albino, you have this big window right here, and this is called the modulation matrix. So let's add something to the matrix. I want the mod envelope to control the symmetry of oscillator 2. So I first insert mod envelope in the first cell, and then I add oscillator 2 symmetry to the last cell in the same row. Now I can shape the mod envelope to create different modulations on the symmetry of oscillator 2. The symmetry is this knob, by the way, which blends the two waveforms together. You can choose to set the speed of each section of the envelope by hand or to sync it to the project tempo. I like to not use the sync mode, so you have more control. In the matrix window, the numbers between the modulation source and the modulation destination stand for the amount of modulation. This can either be a positive or a negative value. Now if I play around with the mod envelope, you can hear what it does. Each time the note is triggered, you hear the same modulation going on. Now, I drop oscillator 2 one octave to bring it more in the bass region. As you can hear, this sort of creates a vowel kind of sound, which is great for loud electronic music. I also like to add some spreading to oscillator 2, just a tiny bit more than oscillator 1. This adds the detuning I talked about earlier, and this also creates a more stereo feeling to the sound. You can change the sound by playing with the symmetry knob and by shuffling around the waveforms in oscillator 2. Under the filter section. For this sound I'll use two filters. Oscillator 1 goes into filter 1 and oscillator 2 goes into filter 2. I can now turn on filter 2, otherwise it won't have any effect. Next to the filters there is a knob called balance. With this you can balance the volume output of filter 1 and filter 2. And by turning it all the way to the left, we only hear the output of filter 1. So let's take down the cutoff on filter 1 a bit, since the high frequencies will be coming through filter 2. Now I want the same mod envelope to control the cutoff frequency of filter 1, so in the matrix I can add mod envelope as the source and filter 1 cutoff as the destination. Then I drag the amount fully up. Lower the cutoff until you can clearly hear the mod envelope doing its work when a note is triggered. I also like to add a tiny bit of resonance. This makes the modulation a little bit more obvious. Next thing I really like about the filters in Albino is the saturation settings. I absolutely love saturation type 3, but watch out. This can really bring up the volume very fast. So if you use saturation type 3, try to keep it kinda low so it doesn't totally ruins and smashes your sound. All the types sound different and they saturate a different frequency range. 3 seems to saturate the biggest range of frequencies and really gives your synths and basses some grit. So now I switch the balance all the way to filter 2. Note that filter 2 contains the second oscillator which has that nice vowel tone to it. First I switch it to a high pass filter and then I bring down the cutoff. I also add a fair amount of resonance to create some extra frequencies around the cutoff point. Now I use the modulation matrix again to modulate the cutoff on filter 2 with the same mod envelope. Now I think a negative value of 0.5 sounds about right. Let's add some more body to the sound with one of the saturation options. Well, type 2 sounds very great if you ask me. I can bring back the balance to somewhere in between filter 1 and 2 and blend the two filtered oscillators together. I want to bring the second oscillator a little bit more up front by shaping its modulation with another envelope. I use one of the oscillator envelopes, which I don't use yet. And then I connect oscillator 4 envelope to the oscillator 2 symmetry. Now I turn up the value and then raise the attack. If you listen closely, you can hear that the sound starts a little bit more powerful because we let the symmetry raise faster. Onto the effects section. In the first slot I choose a compressor. I use a compressor with a high ratio and a low threshold, so the signal gets compressed pretty heavily. Now after this, we are done within Albino and it's time to do some EQing. So let's add an EQ8 to this track. I use this EQ to take out everything below 100 Hz, which is the frequency area we are going to need for a sub bass. Now I'm going to do something different. I'm going to use ARTFX. This is a VST plugin by Rob Papen, which comes with Predator, and you can put it on a track and then use Predator's built-in effects to change the sound. Okay, so in the first FX slot inside Predator, I'm going to insert a multi-distort. This is a very versatile distortion effect with which you can beef up your mid-range bass. It comes with multiple types of distortion which all sound different. Just browse through them to see which one sounds the best for your bass sound. So I take the saturator and I play around with the amount 1 and amount 2 knobs until I get something nice. Then in FX slot 2, I put a cabinet. Just like with the multi-distort, it has different types. Browse through them to see which one sounds best to your bass sound. With the cabinet you can really shape the bass and treble area and also add more grit with the distortion knob. Afterwards, I take the mix knob back down a little to blend the distorted signal with the dry, not distorted signal. I can do the same thing with the multi-distort if I want. Finally, in the third FX slot, I put the normal distort plugin and I just f***ed up even more. Hey, what the f***? So now I blend this with the original again, and voila! I just made my bass patch a lot more interesting. I just take the amp volume knob down inside Predator to control the output volume a little, since things have become quite loud. So now I put another EQ8 after the Predator FX plugin. On this EQ I take out all the frequencies below 100 Hz again, since the distortion might have brought those back up. I also make a little dip around the mid-range area, and this is to give it a little bit more room to breathe. Also, this helps with making your other instruments a bit clearer. So, things have become quite heavy, but I'm going to see how far I can push this sound by adding another distortion and compression plugin, my good old friend Camel Fat. First I choose a blank preset from the menu like this. Then I take down the output volume because Camel Fat makes your sound a lot louder. Now I activate the distortion panel and raise the tube distortion a little, or maybe not just a little, but about 60%. Nice and warm, just how I like them. Somehow I mostly end up adding a bit of all types of distortion. Remember to take down the output volume though. Then at the bottom of Camel Fat you can find the compression panel. I activate it and start raising the amount. For this sound I'm gonna go with a very long release so the compression blends in nicely. Now one more thing I always do after distorting, as you might know already, is taking out everything below 100 Hz to make room for a sub. I also take out a slight bit of the high frequencies because they've become a little bit too painful to my ears. Oh, I forgot to tell you that inside Camel Fat you also have the Magic EQ, which basically adds some frequencies. It's worth to check it out, sometimes it helps warming up the sound and cranking up the bass frequencies a little. Okay, so as I play this, you can hear that the bass sort of pushes away the drums a little. Now I can take the volume of the bass down, but I need this volume in the mid-range bass, so I'm using a technique called sidechain compression on this sound. I drag an instance of Ableton Live's compressor to my bass group track. I turn on sidechain mode by clicking this little arrow button and then clicking the sidechain button. Then I choose my sidechain trigger track. This can be your normal basic kick, but I'm using a 4x4 house kick drum which is muted, so you don't hear it, but it's only triggering the sidechain effect. Also remember to turn the attack knob all the way down, so the compressor starts ducking down the bass immediately. Now when I lower the threshold, the bass is going to duck away when this sidechain trigger is playing. The compressor also has 3 different modes. For sidechaining, I always use the FF1 or FF2 setting. Let's see if I improve the sound. This is without the compressor on it, and this is with. The drums have become a lot more clear now. I'm still not fully satisfied with the notes itself, so let's change them a little now. I'm not going to discuss this, just watch and listen closely. So that sounds a lot better. Note that this is not the final bass line. I'm going to add more patches to this to create a very cool drop. Next week, I continue with the next bass patch. See you next week.